Welcome to the Iron Will podcast, where we talk about overcoming adversity and challenges, creating the life we truly want, and how we use iron therapy to improve our mind and body. No matter what life throws at us, we need to develop an iron will to push through whatever stands in the way to becoming the very best version of ourselves. It's never too late, but now is the time for action. Welcome to episode 207 of the Iron Will podcast, Settling In. So at this point, having made some big changes about the business, going through some pretty tough situations, and by no means out of it, but we're looking now, we're October 22nd at the time of this audio recording. I always like to say videotaping, and then people are like, what's videotaping? So, we're coming up on, September, October, 60, coming up on 90 days, 75 days since having to close things down and make that big change. And as I was saying in the earlier episodes, and that, at the height of the stress, when things had to get done and just it was raining cats and dogs, it was chaos, what I kept telling myself was two things. I'm coming up on 5 years sober, so every day mattered. Stay on top of that. And that every 30 days, things were going to get better. Keep moving forward. Just breathe, get through the day, get through the lunch, get through the supper, get to bed, rest, and get back at it again. Sometimes breaking it down an hour at a time, a truckload at a time, one piece of equipment at a time. And it was tough. It was very tough. It was tough emotionally. It was tough physically. It was tough on the ego. But it had to be done. And I often say that once we start taking action on something, there is some relief. But often action leads to more stress, especially early, first starting. The heavy lifting is always at the beginning. So you pull the trigger, then you got to deal with that. And that's why we often avoid it, because we know the right decision quite often what it is. But we know that the moment we make that decision, it's going to get even uglier. Maybe for an instant. Maybe it's just a punch to the fucking face because you finally stood up to somebody. But we know it's coming. But once it's done, the sting goes away pretty quick. So we get past that. So almost 75 days later, things are smoother. There's more time that has passed. And I'm able now to start settling into the new lifestyle. And it's interesting. It's interesting because we talked also about breaking a cycle and how when we're knee deep in something, we're focusing on what's only in front of us and not what's around us in the bigger picture. It's very difficult to imagine ourselves in any other situation. We're sitting there going, hey, you know what? I'm a business owner and I just work 15 to 16 hours a day. That's the way it is. But is it though? Does it have to be that way all the time? I'm a business owner, so I just don't have time for events with the family and friends to do them all. I have to pick and choose. And in the beginning of a business, I believe that's true. In an expansion of a business, I believe that's true. If you're all of a sudden going in a new direction or adding something, a new dynamic. And that's okay for the short term. But when we find ourselves just going through the motions and just dealing with it and just going and accepting that that's just the way things are going to be, then we're not going to make any changes. We're not going to strive to improve things. We're not going to sit there and look at how we can do things differently. We're not going to sit there and evaluate to see if, hey, what are we doing now? Is it working? Does it make sense? Is this just a tough patch? Or does it no longer work this way? And this is the same for having a job, a career, going to school, a relationship. We get into that. We run into that a lot. So at the end of the day, right, we have to sit back and evaluate am I just stuck? Am I truly happy where I'm at? Or am I just comfortable and I don't want to make changes? I don't like stuff, but some stuff I do, and I'm kind of getting by. Or the fear of the unknown of what life would be other than what we're doing. That's real. A lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people are in relationships because they're not able to have that tough conversation. They're afraid to have a tough conversation because they're afraid it might end the relationship. Maybe they don't want the relationship to end. Or they're afraid to have a conversation because they know that it is time to end that relationship. But then they're worried about, where am I going to live? What happens to my stuff? What's it going to be like financially? What about the kids? It's the same for work. What if I finally stand up for myself? Am I going to get fired? We had this. We had a little example of this with my daughter working part-time. She's 16. She's a good worker. So what do you think happens? Well, they call her in more often. Hey, you're at 4. I know you're supposed to work at 4. Can you come in right after school? Hey, can you cover this shift on Saturday? Hey, can you do this? Now, listen, at first, she'll say yes. She has been saying yes because she likes working. But the other day, something was off with her. She's a bit like me, a little crazy. But I could tell something was different. So I started bugging her about it. And at first, no, everything's good. I kept bugging her about it. No, it's good. Kept bugging about it. I want to talk. And then it's like, I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, all right, I'm on to something here. So I kept pushing until she got upset. And then when she got upset, the floodgates just opened up. And I'm the same way. I hold everything in. And, I don't want to get upset. And I don't want to, I'm like, just clam up about it. We'll figure it out, that kind of thing. But when I finally do snap, it's fucking crazy. So obviously I'm working on that, not to get to that point where it's a volcanic eruption all the time. So recognizing what she's going through, because that's how I operate, I'm able to navigate it a little bit better with her. And then we get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter was this. She's in school. She's dyslexic, so she has to work really hard in school. She made the honor roll last year. So proud of her. So proud of her because of how proud she is of herself, how hard she's worked. She plays competitive hockey. She gets called up to play the next level as well, and to go to their practices. And she has this job that she really likes. She likes making some money. She likes doing that. She likes the independence that's coming with it. But what was happening is that she was becoming afraid that if she didn't take those extra hours, they would cut all her hours. And for her, that was a very real fear. This is her first job. And she's listening to what they're saying, it's slowing down. We're cutting hours to everybody. So she's like, oh, well, I don't want to lose any of my hours, so I don't want to do anything that would make them want to do that. She was very concerned about that. But what was happening, she was getting tired, physically and emotionally, with everything she had on her plate, because school is important. Her hockey is super important to her. We believe if you make a commitment to a team or to an organization, you are fucking committed to that team. You show up to practices. You get shit done. We've always run it that way with our kids. And she's committed to work. But she was burning out. And at 16, right, you're not always equipped with the right tools to be able to have those conversations, with your parents right away, or with your employer, or your coach, or your teacher. And when we were explaining to her is that at 16, you're not supposed to have those tools. We're going to help you develop those tools. We're going to show you that this is the time that you have to have a conversation. You have to step up and say, listen, coach, I got to talk to you about something. Or your manager at work, or your teacher. You have to self-advocate. Not easy. I know a lot of adults that can't do it yet. But you have to learn to do it. And our job as parents is to teach them that. Not to jump in right off the bat and go see that manager at the store and say, hey, man, what are you doing here? Because that doesn't help her. That doesn't help him. Being an employer, I've had parents that have done that, and it doesn't go well. If the employee tells me, hey, Kurt, I can't work Thursdays anymore, I'm like, all right, let's work something out. But until they tell me there's a problem, why would I think there's a problem? What I was explaining to my daughters, because you do such good work, of course they want you. They have limited hours, because they are cutting back because it's slowing down in the season. So they want to make sure that the hours that do go out to staff are to the staff that get things done. But I said, listen, you're not going to lose your job because you say, I can't come in 2 hours early. You have to learn to say no, and it's okay to say no. And if you say no and then they give you a hard time, then as a parent, I would step in. Then as a business owner, understanding the labor laws, I would definitely have a conversation with that manager. But she has to deal with that first. She has to make the first steps. But these are the tools that we're teaching them. Listen, same with hockey. What we're trying to teach them in hockey is life skills, teamwork, winning, losing, working together towards a common goal, working hard, conflict resolution on ice, in the change room. Because that's what they're really going to benefit from playing hockey. Very few people make it to the NHL or the WHL. I don't fucking know how that works for ladies. I don't know how high it goes anymore. But, Team Canada. And everyone has a chance to, and everyone's capable of doing it if they have the right skills and they put the hard work. I totally believe in that. But very few people make it to that level. So if that's the only reason why your kid's in sports, or you have your kids in sports, it's not good. But rather, it's to teach them to be social, problem solve, self-advocate, stand up for their teammates, work together. These are life skills that you need to learn to develop. And the better you learn them at an earlier age, the more effective you're going to be in your career, in your other relationships, in your business. So what we want to try and do is look at what's going on around us. Are we tired? Are we broken? Are we miserable? Are we happy? If you're happy and your shit's lined up and things are going well, awesome. And people are in that state. That is out there. And the one thing that people know when they get to that level, there's still room for improvement. But if you're not there, and you know the choices that have to be made, and you're afraid to make those choices, that's where you get stuck. That's where you get miserable. That's where you get tired and broken and jaded and negative. And no one wants to be around you because you're draining. You don't add to the conversation. Your presence doesn't add anything positive to the community around you, work or home. It takes away. It drains. And people that have got their shit together aren't going to want to spend too much time with that because they know that's draining. That's not good. So when you're in that situation and you recognize you're in that situation, you've got to make the tough choices. If you want to move on, if you want to evolve, if you want to become happier, if you truly want to become the person you want to become, you have to make that happen. You have to make that decision, and you have to take the action. You have to do some research. What would another job look like? What would another business look like? How do I have this tough conversation with my spouse at home? Do some research. Figure things out. Go talk to somebody. But once we do that, and once we make that big change, you'll get onto the other side of it. And you'll start to settle back in again. It might seem far off. It might feel like that's a million miles or years away. But listen, here's the thing. It only is going to be that way if you just stay in the cycle that you're in. And at 50, 51 years old, for me, that was one of the big things that was really starting to gnaw at me, is that I'm 50 now. I don't feel 50, but I am 50. That's the mortality, the reality of it and stuff. And 50 becomes 55, 55 becomes 60. How do I want to spend the next 5 and 10 years? Not spinning my wheels, not being miserable, not being, unsuccessful in any aspect of my life. So 75 days later, settling in, my life looks very, very different. My daughter was saying that, I'm like a stay-at-home dad now. I'm always home. I've been home more in the last 75 days than I have been in the last 15 years. That's a culture shock. That's a culture shock for me, my wife, my kids. One of the things I'm determined to do with this is not put myself in a situation where I have to work 18 hours a day again. I have too many skills, too many resources to have to put myself in that situation. Unless there's a project that comes up, an event or something big. That's different. Then you fucking set, you buck up and you go right through it. But if you don't set different standards for yourself, you're always going to succumb to what you've done in the past. Part of the reason why I kept myself really busy sometimes was to avoid dealing with things, avoid thinking about things that weren't working, that I wasn't happy about. Oh, I haven't got time to even think about that. So one of the goals I have now for myself is to work 35 hours a week. 35 hours of what I call, real work, where I'm actually working on something online, at a show, making clothing. 35 hours a week. Weekends off unless I'm at an event. Home by 5 or 6. Like a normal person. And it's weird. It's weird. I've had a couple, over the weeks, I've had a couple of days where I haven't gone outside. I haven't had to leave the house for anything. That is bizarre, man. Because I used to be up early and out. It was dark when I left and it was dark when I came home. All the time. One of the things that's kind of weird is because I do have more time to get things done, I get caught sometimes saying, I got lots of time. I can do that later on today. I don't want to get into that habit. I'm like, got to do this, spend an hour, let's get some shit done. But settling in is also your chance to really start to engineer things the way you want them to be. I still have pressures. I still have financial holes to dig out of from the business, stuff like that. That's not going away. And that's not going to get solved overnight. But it is easier 75 days later than it was 75 days ago. But the light at the end of the tunnel is much more visible. So much of the pressure is off and the stress is off. There's times when I miss my gym horribly. I miss the people a lot. But overall, I'm in a much better situation because I removed a lot of what was not working and the pressure and the stress. And a lot of the anger has gone away with that. A lot of the frustration has gone away with that. So I can see things better, more clearly, more effectively. The weight is off my back. And now it's in front of me, pulling me forward as motivation, as focus. Because I'll tell you the other thing, being 51, is that, as I spoke to earlier, 55 comes quick and so does 60. There's a lot that I want to accomplish. There's a lot that I want to do with the rebuild of the brand. There's a lot that I know we can do in a short amount of time because at this stage in the game, the amount of resources and connections that I have, that I've acquired and I've built over the years, so nothing takes that away from you. That's the one thing that we have to understand is that experience is so, so valuable. And you only get experience with time in. You only get real knowledge with getting beat up, spit out, being successful, being unsuccessful. But that doesn't go away. That's the difference. You talk to anyone that's had to restart and rebuild, who's lost everything and started over again, they'll tell you the second time is easier. The third time, there's people that are fifth time, even more. They get better and better at it. And they're just finding out a way that doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. This didn't work. Sometimes there's outside forces that cause things not to work. But at the end of the day, we never lose that experience. We have to listen to it. We have to take advantage of it. Like I talked earlier about a master craftsman using his tools properly. Experience is a phenomenal tool. An experience is something that no one can give to you. You have to walk it and earn it. But no matter what you're going through, once you make that tough call and you get on the other side of it, things will start to settle down again. It's not going to be easy at first. But if you don't change, nothing will change. Guys, that's all I have to say on that for now. As always, I appreciate you guys listening. We're getting some good feedback. A lot of people are happy that the podcast is back on the air. People are digging the new Iron Will look to it and brand to it. It's great to have an audience that we can increase by having the ladies listen. I mean, they always did, but now we can work on appealing to them a bit, both sides of the fence. And for me, it's good to be back into this. I've said it many, many times. Having the podcast helps me as much as it helps anyone who benefits from it. Head on over to Iron Hoss Gear. Use the code word IronWill. Save 20% on a hoodie, a t-shirt, 2 hoodies. It's getting cold out there. As always, guys, work hard, motherfuckers, and I'll talk to you guys later.